this is the closing presentation. So I'm a little bit impressed. So why do Semitic writings not include short vowels? It's a traditional question, in fact. Another way of putting the same question would be, how does the study of Semitic writings modify the theory of writing? In fact, this is an essential theoretical question. What do we learn regarding the theory of writing? The traditional question is calling for a deeply renewed vision. The question of the lack of vowels is traditional in histories of writing. Since Marcel Cohen, James Février, Gelb, etc. It is also traditional in Semitic studies. Sorry. A first answer is that they didn't know what vowels were. This is one basic question. It is based on the basic idea that earlier people were less clever than we are, which is not necessarily true. And then, in fact, ancient Greek and Latin writings have been described as scriptio continua because all the words were attached. And then alphabetic writings in the Semitic area are called scriptio defectiva because they did not have the vowels. So they even went, Gelb, for instance, went so far as to say they were completely consonantal writings. And in the history of writing, in the false, now acknowledged as false idea of writing as a development, cognitive development or historic development in the history of mankind, can no longer be, this view can no longer be held, because now we know that every language is related to, every writing system is related to its own language, one way or the other. First of all, factually, there were long vowels which were later known as matres lectionis in the writing of the Bible, since the 13th century BC. So it's factually wrong. Then epistemologically, the idea of the development of writing is elusive. And there were, in Auguste Comte in the 19th century, the development of mankind through given steps. But then the opposed view is that of Condillac in the 18th century. And then, as opposed to this view, they did not know what vowels were. There was another theory, which was proposed, in fact, by James Février, taken up by many teachers and many Arab linguists, according to which morphological forms would replace the need for vowels. When you recognize the morphological pattern, the pattern will allow you to know the vowel. And then the main trouble of this is that a big number of nouns do not answer to this. And then also within the system, there are many ambiguities. A word like Yasemin, Jasmine in English, Safarjal, UNESCO, Mauritania, and even now names of countries do not answer to this. There's a now current view which could be considered as better. Writing systems are related to their own language. We have it in John Lyons first, but also well developed by Nina Katash and other authors. I developed it, I contributed to it in for Semitic writings, and this is to be published by Fluxus Virus soon. But the approach remains insufficient because, in fact, you could relate a language to its system. That's a comparison way of treating the subject. But then the trouble is the questions of why and how remains. Why is it so? So, in fact, the key word for me is process, and I would say cognitive process. Cognitive taken in a broader sense that will include a historical process which is related to a given culture, has been analyzed for the French culture, for instance, by Sylvain Auroux, Lédy de Villers-Cotterêts, etc. And then in Arabic, there were also political decisions to use Arabic as a language. I really mentioned political religions on purpose, in addition, of course, to religious reasons. There's a social process which is related to the institution of norms. This was analyzed by René Balibar and also Sylvain Auroux, but René Balibar first, colingualism in the French language, and then grammatization. So there's a whole history of the process which is to be made in Arabic. I have done some of it, I contributed to it, but a lot remains to be done. Researchers, let us call them like that, on the Arabic language, lexicographers, grammarians, but also corpus collectors, did a tremendous work in the first centuries of Islam, because basically the religious reason is that if you have to explain the Quran and to explain the teaching of the Prophet, it has to be explained with a corpus, which is sometimes a word appears just once in the Quranic text. So they did a lot of work, which is remarkably modern in its approach compared to what we do today. And then grammatization and colingualism and the emergence of and development of a writing system. The two first answers to why does the why do Semitic writings not use vowels where they didn't know about it, wrong. Two, patterns can make up for the lack of vowels. It's also only partly true. So the percentage for which it is true is low. So it doesn't answer the question. So we have to think about the process through which Semitic writings emerged or appeared. Arabic is easier to analyze with this respect because it's the latest born of Semitic writings, one thing, and then it was born at a time when they would write down historical processes. That is from the 7th century, 8th century, 9th century onwards. In other languages, say Greek and Latin, for instance, lots of things were put down in writing. So one question is that Semitic writings produced finite inventories of phonographic units, that is, alphabets. And then on the other hand, they produced morpho-graphic or morphological morpho-graphic units. That's word forms. Okay, so sound and writing relations is the production perspective, and then visual relations, word forms, is the recognition perspective. So in Western and Southern Semitic writings, the inventory was that of the alphabet. In Arabic, the phonographic convention which resulted in the inventory of letters, that is, of graphemes noted in the body of words, is essentially rhythmical. Rhythmical, or you could also say metrical. The convention can be phrased as follows: write a letter for the initial of every syllable, adding a second letter if the syllable is long. That is, if it's of the CVC or CVV form, where C is for consonant and V for vowel. So this is related to the fact that in this language, no syllable begins with a vowel. It's one of the basic facts of that language. If we take an example, such as the one we have here, yes. So the metric rhythmic writing, I wrote everything in Latin letters. Capital letters are for letters in the body of words, and then diacritic letters, diacritic sounds such as vowels are written in small letters. In fact, if you take Nabil Talib, which means Nabil is a student, Talib is a long A. So the second part of the long A is a sign, it is a letter. As this appeared, as I mentioned, in the 13th century BC. So it's, they did not discover it later. So this is the phonographic perspective, so from sound to words. And then we have another perspective, which is the visual perspective. If one thinks of a writing system, one has to take into account two different things: reading as a process, writing as a process, producing and reading. In between, and I have not mentioned it here, I will not mention it, there's orthography. So this could have made my presentation 10 minutes longer, so I skipped it. But in between, you have orthography, of course. And then in the morphographic, in the reading perspective, what you have in Arabic is that you have a structure of the word form. You also have it in Hebrew. It has been studied very well also in Hebrew. From both psychocognitive, in psychocognitive research in Hebrew, and we did some of it in Arabic with a colleague from X. So you have in a minimal word form, I took a verb, you have the prefix, then the stem, and then the suffix. That would be yanziluna, they, ya, third person, nzil, verb to go down, and una is masculine plural. So they go down, masculine plural. So you can see that you have much less letters in the actual writing of the word, but everybody in Arabic recognizes this word. I can give you a funny example. If you travel with low-cost planes, you would probably have used Fly Pegasus, and it's written F-L-Y-P-J Z-S. So it's without the vowels. There's only one vowel which is more or less, it's the second part of the vowel. It would be in the Arabic analytic system, fly, F-L-I, P, J, Z-S. So you have the same here. And when you read what is written on the plane, you don't even think, well, I think of it because this is my job, but people don't think of a writing system that would be akin to what we have in Arabic. In the reading perspective, there's something more. And behind the small thing I've written, there is over 10 years of research with a group of researchers in Tunis and in Lyon. We did a database called DINAR, D-I-I-N-A-R, Dictionnaire informatisé de l'arabe, which is based on, which develops what I'm going to hint at today. So, fa, li, tasku, nu, ha. Fali, and for, this is a conjunction. And for you, second person, skun, inhabit, u is plural. So you, plural, inhabit, ha is inhabit it, in this case, feminine. So you have, in this case, what do we actually have? So we have a few things. Lexical stems can be analyzed for verbs, for 100% of verbs, a certain percentage of nouns, into stems and roots. That's one thing. Also, and also, in addition, there's a complex word grammar. If we word form grammar, the complex word form grammar meant that we had specifiers added to every single stem in the language. We did this over a few years with a group of researchers, and the number of relations was finite, of course, so that every single word could be analyzed by the system. So you have a complex word grammar, and the fact that we could do it and that all the relations were finite and could be explained rather easily. It takes some time, but it can be explained to students over 20 hours or something like that, means that it is something that is cognitive, from a cognitive point of view, reasonably simple, and probably a cognitive structure that explains the way people read words in Arabic. And then this is also related to what we showed to, or say, gave arguments for with Grainger and other researchers, contour reading in Arabic. That is, when you read with Latin characters, it's like what you do when you write a stem. You write the first three letters, and then you have the rest of the word appearing on your SMS, under your SMS, so you can click on the rest of the word. It doesn't work like that in Arabic. In Arabic, people, it could be used for SMSs, but in Arabic, in fact, people photograph, quotes, the word and then analyze it. And this is a process which means that the process of reading in Arabic is not a letter-by-letter process. It's a word contour process, which we have studied with Grainger in a psycholinguistic research. This has also been shown in Hebrew by many researchers in the end of the last century. Hebrew is interesting because in Arabic, the writing is cursive. That is, you attach letters to the rest of the word, and some letters are not attached, as we have in a previous presentation. But in Hebrew, no, the letters are separated. So the contour reading also operates in Hebrew. It is not related to the way words are actually written or handwritten. So, and I'm getting to the end of my presentation, very near the end of my presentation. Yes. So the grammatization process in Arabic that led to what I have shown has been at length discussed by lexicographers, by grammarians in the first centuries of the Arabo-Islamic culture. That would be between the 7th and the 10th century, with big books. One of the persons who wrote a book about lexicographers said that if we were to bring someone with a time machine from Iraq in the 8th or 9th century to the British Museum, and if we were to show that person something like the OUP, Oxford University Press, 30 volumes, he would not have been surprised. He'd say, well, we have that at home. In fact, he would have said that because they had it. This is why I'm saying that the grammatization process can be shown for Arabic. I'm just hinting at it, but I'm showing that it can be done. So and other point number 2, the approach to Arabic and Semitic writings is fundamental to the theory of writing. It's essential to think about the relation between grammatization on one side, recognition on one side, and production on the other side, in such a way that we can reconsider what we can say about other writings. So combining the writing, that is grapheme production, and the reading, word form recognition perspectives, is an essential point of what is brought forward by Semitic writings. So, oops, I'm sorry. And then I have a list of references, which I can send to anyone, but it's a small list. And with this last point about the concept of analytic of writing, I can move to my last perspective. That is, thank you for listening. And of course, see you at the next Graphic conference. I'm the last one to speak at this one.
Thank you. Any questions? Amalia?
I hope it's not a difficult question.
No, probably not. Or maybe it's just a very confused question. But I was really interested in what you were saying about the templates for the words with the, the proclitic and the prefix and so forth. But I'm a little bit confused still about how that plays out in practice. So how would you know, looking at a string of letters, that what that templatic division is? How do you tell that you've got a proclitic first, or whether you went straight to a prefix first? And how does the writing of consonants and not the short vowels help make that clearer? I'm missing something there.
Yeah, thank you. In fact, proclitics, there's a small list of proclitics. The list is not very long. And then the number of consonants that can be a proclitic is limited. That's one thing. It's the same with suffixes and prefixes. There are finite lists which can be recognized. Then you have the grammar, which will tell you, for instance, here, inhabit accepts a complement. You inhabit something. So you can have an enclitic complement for inhabit. But also in Arabic, you have complements that are just for human beings. You cannot, except if you're a ghost, you cannot inhabit a human being usually. So, in fact, you would not have a personal complement, a pronoun which is limited to persons in the end. So the grammar of the word form grammar, which is, I told you, it is a complex grammar to some extent, but it can be taught to students in a university over, say, 20 to 25 hours.
A quick follow-up. Is the list of, you said the list of proclitics and prefixes and so forth is relatively short. Are they shorter? Is the list shorter if you only write the consonants than it would be if you wrote the vowels? In other words, is there a proclitic that also has F and L, but different vowels?
Yes, yes, it makes, because there's it's a set of relations. So it's a set of relations. The set of relations appears in the brains of, we have not been as far as the colleagues who worked on Hebrew from that side, but in Hebrew it works. So they showed that it works.
Thanks.
No other question? So thank you very much, Joseph.
Thank you.